Hello, this is a video on how to write your first Java program. I hope you will learn some basic input-output, which we call I/O, and some basic operations. As you learn more algorithmic thinking, you'll be able to write more and more complicated programs. So learning to code is like learning to swim. At first, it may look like something that is really difficult or impossible to do. But if you stick with it and struggle with it, and I will assure that it'll come to you sooner than later. So coding is difficult, but if you put the time to it, you can learn it. So don't worry, many of your classmates are in the same boat. They are all trying to understand how to speak this computational language. So how do we get started? So the first thing you need to do is to getting started with the JDK. JDK stands for Java Development Kit. So in order to install JDK, you must go to Sakai, go to Java Setup, and then follow the instructions on how to install JDK on your machine. After you install it, we will be able to see how to edit the path variables in the Windows instructions, or see your video for Mac instructions in the Classroom Salon. Then after restarting the computer, you can activate JDK. So take a minute to install JDK just for going to Sakai and to Java Setup. So I hope you were able to follow instructions on this Java Setup page on Sakai to install JDK. Having JDK run on your machine is the first thing to do. Once you do it once, you're done for the whole semester. You can use that Java again and again. If you have done the Java correctly, the way to check that is to, in Windows, you open a command window by typing cmd, and then in there you type javac. Now, if you see a bunch of messages like this, it means that Java is already installed on your machine. If you don't see it, it might say something like the program not found, which means although Java may be installed in your machine, the path variable is not correctly set up. So what I like to do is to show you in Windows how to set up the path variable. So in order to set up the path variable, you must find by going to your folder. So this is in Windows. So you will go to the program files under C directory and go to Java and go to JDK. You may have more than one version. So, and go to bin and then copy. The bin is where you will find this Java-C program. Notice Java-C is called an application. That means we can run this program. This is the compiler that will compile your Java code locally. So in order to make sure that just Java-C is available, you have to copy this path. And then in Windows, you go to Path, and you edit the system environment variables. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the environment variables, go to the path, and we say edit. And if you see Java-C already here, then it's fine. If you don't, you type new, you click on new, and then plug in the Java path into here. The same thing we did. So you plug in the Java path. In this case, we don't have to do this because we already have that. And then cancel in my case. So that's very important. After you do that, you must go back and restart your computer to see if the Java works. So when you restart the computer, it'll do what it did with my command. So when you type javac, you should be able to see this bunch of messages about the usage. So that's all good news. Next, we're going to look at how to install Atom. So I hope you restarted your computer and activated JDK. As we mentioned, when you type javac, if you see a bunch of usage messages, that means you have properly installed JDK. The next tool, what we call is the Atom, is the editor that we will be using in this class. But if you're familiar with another editor, you can skip this part. We must notice, however, no support will be provided for other editors. So to install Atom, you have to watch the videos on Sakai, how to, and follow instructions and install. Those instructions are available in Sakai under How To. There are 3 videos here you should download and watch how to install Atom and perhaps write your first Java program, compile and execute. So take a minute to install Atom. Now that you have installed JDK and you have installed Atom, you should see Atom on your desktop. So, and also in this case, I created a folder to save my work. You can create a folder for your code any place where you like. The key thing is to know where your folder address is. So you can, in Windows, you can get a copy of this address because I will need this going into the next step. So in the next step, I'm going to be open Atom, and I will go to File and say I want to add a project folder that I like to work with. And in that project folder, I'm going to plug in the path I copied. So I say select folder. If you get a message like this, you can say open in new window and recover state. So now what we get is the folder, but it does not have any files in it. So the next thing to do is to add Java files into this. So you can right click on it and say new file. If you enter the name of the file, you can say io.java. That's the first thing that we're going to be working on. So if you open io.java, you will notice that, let me close this windows. io.java has nothing in it. So where's this io.java coming from? This is the input-output program you need, and you can find them in the resources on Sakai. You go to Sakai and you go to IO class, and if you click on IO Java, and that's the file you want. So what you can do is you can select all this code, which you don't need to know how they work. All you have to do is make a copy of it, and then go back to the Atom window. So let's go back to that here, and then substitute. And then make sure you save this in there. So that's the first thing we did. All right, so what's the next thing we want to do? IO is like, this allows you to do input-output that your programs will be tested on. So although there are many different IO packages or libraries exist in Java, at Rutgers, we are only going to be using this IO package. So what I like to show you next is how to write a program which will use this IO package. So let's create another file. Let's call it a new file. Let's give this program the name myprogram.java. So that's the name of the program. So notice that I have myprogram.java. So what I'm going to do is to show you how to use the input-output class and how to do a very simple program in Java. So in order to write text here, I will direct you again to Sakai. Let's go back to Sakai, and you go to the resources, and you go under my name, and you look for code snippets, and then you get this template which will help you start writing programs. So again, I'm going to get a copy of this and go back to Atom and then paste that file here. So notice that this is a real program code, but we haven't done anything here. It just have the essential components that a Java program must have. It must have a main program whose class name called my program is the same name as the file where this text lives. And every program must have an entry point, and we call the main the entry method. This is where the program will start to execute. In other words, when you run your program, it'll start from here. It might call other functions or procedures to do things, but this is where it's going to start. So what type of code you want to write here? So let's go back to our PowerPoint to see what we can try. So we're going to try to do the following. We'll go to this piece of code. This is called my first program. So writing your first program using Java. I'm just going to take this text because I have all the other components in place. So I'm going to copy that and go back to Atom and then put that code in here. So notice that code is not properly indented. So what we need to do is to indent this code. So there's a read double, and then we want to display what was read. So make sure that this is correctly done. So we have the two output statements, so that's what we call display. When we learn how to write pseudocode, we learn we have to read and write. So we read with read, integer and double here. So in this case, we are reading an integer called a. You may want to provide some meaningful names as you write a real program. For that, we are using this io.readInt. The io is the one that we got here. The reason we need io here, because our program called my program is going to use io. So without this io, it's not going to run. And then it has what we call a method. That's like a way to get an integer, way to read an integer. So keep this in mind. This is an easy way to figure out how to read an integer. And same way, you can read a double. Double, what we mean by double, is a real number, like 3.5. Once you read those two numbers, then we want to output those two numbers using another method or procedure called output int answer and output double answer. So all this program does is to read two numbers. One is an integer and the other one is a double, and then try to print them out. So I'm going to save this, and next I'm going to show you how I'm going to run this program. If you install the packages correctly, you should go back to Sakai how-to videos to find out. You should see the package Platformia IDE terminal. From there, you go to new terminal, and what it does is to open a new terminal for you, and it shows you the path. This is the path we saved our files, and if you want to see what files are in here, we type ls. ls indicates that it's list all the files in that folder. So in that folder we have two files, io.java, which is 3,346 bytes. My program Java is 465 bytes. My program is the one you're changing. IO is the one you're not changing, but you need it. So now the next step is to compile this code, because every program, after you edit, you want to compile this. In other words, you want to prepare this to get bytecode. So to get bytecode, we're going to do the following. We type javac and the name of the program. It's called myprogram.java. So if you type M and press tab key, it might complete the entire name so that you don't make a mistake. And if things are okay, it's going to compile it correctly. Notice it created two additional classes called IO class and myprogram class. Now those are the ones we call bytecode. Notice that we cannot really read them. And we wouldn't worry about it. We were going to use them, but we're not going to worry about reading the bytecode. Now, if you had mistakes in your program, let's say, for example, you forgot to put a semicolon at the end of the line. So if you forgot the semicolon, and if you compile, it is going to tell you that there's a semicolon expected at a certain line. So in fact, it shows you where the semicolon is expected. It says output int answer reads a semicolon. So we're going to go back and put a semicolon and go and save the file. And then we run it again to compile again to see the output. Now, what happened in the previous time, we call it a compile error. Compile error is an illegal usage of the syntax of the language. The syntax of the language says that every line, every instruction must end with a semicolon. The only thing, there are exceptions such as if conditions and while conditions, but we'll get to that later. But if you have a simple instruction like this, it must end with a semicolon. So now the next step is to run this code. You run the code by typing Java, and you only type my program, Java space my program. So my program is the name of the class, and all you have to do is do that. So this is where the Java interpreter goes into work, and it'll try to show you how the program runs. So note what happens is that when I typed it, it just waits for me to do something. So in fact, it's waiting for me to enter the number 45. Then it's again waiting for me to enter another number, but this time I must provide a double number or real number. And then after I did that, it shows me the results. This is what the computer read, and it's printing out with the name, the header result. It's really important that you use input-output methods from the IO class, like readInt, readdouble, output int answer, output double answer, to do the programs correctly so that AutoGrader can check your programs. So be careful about using main Java things, especially in the case of IO, you must use these type of constructions, and they are all given under Sakai. If you go to resources again, and if you go into Java, let's go to resources and go to Java, IO class. And in the IO class, you can see the io.html, which we call javadoc, that shows you how to use this method. As we go, you're going to learn how to use these methods, and this is one of the things we will do. So let's go back to the program. So this one is a demonstration of a simple program that does read and write. So in the future videos, we will see more complicated programs.